I have always been what you would call an anxious pooper. I require complete solitude, preferably silence. I've lived with my fiancé for 2 years, and I'm pretty sure she has no evidence that I have ever pooped, and I intend to keep it that way. For somebody with my particular condition, traveling in general is hard, but traveling with strangers is impossible. When I first moved to DC about 7 years ago, I didn't know anyone, and I thought an interesting way to meet people might be to join a church. So I met this woman named Becky who said that her church was getting ready to go on an extra long Labor Day weekend retreat, and if I could take off a day or two of work, I could go. It'd be a great chance to get plugged in. So I did, not fully realizing that this meant that I was committing to spending multiple days in the woods with strangers. Days 1, 2, and 3 were not ideal because, you see, in addition to being anxious, I'm also quite regular. By the time day 4 had rolled around, I was desperate, and I decided that it was time to take a risk and find the only one-seater in the encampment and just hope for privacy. I'm going to save you guys some details here, but let's just say that when I finished my business and I turned around and I looked down in the water, what I saw was a single specimen, but it was mighty. I felt mortified, and if I'm being really honest, a little proud. It might be the single largest turd that has ever been produced by anyone in the history of mankind, and I made it. I went to flush away this evidence that I am a human that poops, and nothing happened. There wasn't an attempt, there wasn't a clog, the toilet just did not get the signal. So I did what everybody does in that situation. I picked the back off the toilet and looked in, but there's not like a cheat code taped back there or anything. So I couldn't fix it, and I just had to put the lid back on. I thought about just making a break for it and leaving the bathroom, but I wasn't entirely sure that there wasn't somebody out there already. And these are like helpful church-going people. So what if it was some guy that was like, let me see if I can fix it? And there's not a lid to the toilet, so it would just be all out there and exposed. And he wouldn't say anything to my face, but he would definitely tell other people. And I would go from being the new girl to the girl with the giant poops. I'm just going to pause for a second and say, up until now, most of you might be with me with this story. We all have an embarrassing poop story, and I know that this is the point in time where I'm going to lose you. Because I began to make a series of absurd and unacceptable choices that I can only say were fueled by a combination of shame and fear. So here we go. I decided in that moment that under whatever circumstances necessary, I had to get rid of the poop. So I scanned the environment to look for my options. There was not a trash can. There was not a window, because, I was like, maybe I'll just toss the little fucker out the window. We'll be fine. It's the woods. But there was a sink. And I thought to myself, if I can just get this mega turd from the toilet to the sink, I can turn on some hot water, we'll be good to go. So having never touched my own poop before, I had to wrestle through some stuff, but I also had to act quickly. So I grabbed 2 handfuls of toilet paper, and I proceeded to make the transfer. And it was sturdy, so it survived the journey. I turned on the hot water, and I immediately realized that I did not know as much about the composition of poop as I probably should have before I committed to this course. The first couple of layers melted away as planned, but what emerged was a solid and not water-soluble granola core. And this is when I began to have a full-on panic attack. Because it's one thing to be with the girl with the giant poops, it's another thing to be the girl that shits in a sink. You don't want to be that girl. No, luckily, as our ancestors trained our animal brains, desperation makes us creative. And I looked down and I realized that the drain of the sink could be unscrewed. And I thought, if I can unscrew it, I can just get more toilet paper and just drop it down, and we'll be good. It'll disappear forever. So I grabbed 2 more chunks of toilet paper and I proceeded with Operation Vertical Drop. And I thought it was successful because it disappeared. So I start running hot water again to scrub the shit stains off the side of the sink. But instead of draining, the sink just slowly began to fill with brown stink water. And I grappled with the reality that this was going to be the room that I would die. I was never coming out. They would go home. I would just be that girl that they met once who they lost, and I would die in the woods. And as the tears filled my eyes as I was coming to terms with my own fate, I noticed out of the corner of my eye that there was a plunger that was leaning against the wall. And it was covered in spider webs, but didn't care at this point. Getting bit by a black widow would be a welcome exit from the situation. I grabbed the plunger, I turned it upside down, and I just began to jam it down the sink until the granola turd was decimated. And the water ran and the sink began to drain, so I'm just barehanded now. No need for paper towels. We've moved past that. I start pumping soap into my hand and quite literally scrubbing the shit out of the sink, myself, and the plunger. So I leave the bathroom, and of course there was no one outside. Let's be clear. Could have just left. But I walked with my head held high because even though it was a little touch and go, I had pulled it off. Or so I thought. That night, final night of the trip, I grabbed my toothbrush, I head to the communal bathroom, and as soon as I open the door, I am just hit with this strong sulfur smell. And a woman's getting out of the shower, and Becky, who's at the sink, she looks at Becky and she goes, "Is the water okay with this facility? Like, do they sanitize it and everything? It smells a little weird." And Becky goes, "Don't worry, this place has 2 separate septic tanks. So one is for everything that comes through the sinks and the showers. It's for gray water. They sanitize it. That's what they cycle back. Everything that comes through the toilet goes into the black water tank, and they don't reuse it. So you're good." So I immediately turned around because I knew I wasn't going to be brushing my teeth that night. And as I walked alone into the woods to my cabin, I really thought about all that had transpired in the past 24 hours. I'd gone from being the new girl to the girl with the giant poops to the girl who shits in a sink to the girl who shits on an entire congregation of people. And the term holy shit has had new meaning for me ever since. Thank you.